Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at?
One on that rooftop.
Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in here!
We're east of the riverbed, and we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
All right, welcome to part 2 with Sergeant Major Justin LeHew, United States Marine Corps retired. We had a great first podcast, and for the listeners out there, if you haven't listened to part 1, I really encourage you to listen to that before you listen to this part 2. The part 1, I listened to it in review when we were doing a little bit of editing, and it's just full of golden nuggets from Sergeant Major LeHew that you can really leverage as leaders and especially combat leaders. So with that, Sergeant Major, welcome back.
Mike, it's great to be back on again.
Well, I wanted to jump right back into the interview here and talk about training for combat. I mean, as just like what we've talked about, PT and discipline and all that, training for combat is always in the eye of the beholder. And now as a mature, seasoned, experienced combat leader who also has extensive experience in peacetime training combats to get ready for training the units to get ready for combat. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and this is, Justin, from an individual and a unit perspective. Now that you know what you know, what would you personally, Justin LeHew, what would you have spent more time on and less time on regarding your preparation and training for combat?
I think one of the things is a good leader of any unit in the Marine Corps is, you have a mission essential task list that's part of every unit that's in the Marine Corps. So whether it's your basic infantry functions, whether it's your armor functions, whether it's anything else, it's first of all identifying and knowing in that unit what the mission requirements are for that unit. When they get thrust into the bigger picture, collectively, what are the basic skill sets that unit are supposed to bring to the fight? And you and I talked on the previous podcast about units like what would be the difference if everything was relatively the same between Unit A and Unit B, if you were going to actually advise a commander to say, which one of these two units, Sergeant Major, should I take? Tonight is the basic understanding of what the commander has to understand that's a responsibility to his next higher commander has to be understood by your staff NCOs and your junior leaders, because they're the people that are out there every given day that has to take whatever that is and shape it to be able for you to deliver it when you go off to a meeting as a commander, of which the majority of the unit is not there, and you are sitting around the bigger picture table, and they look over at 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, or 2nd Assault Amphibian Battalion Commander or something, and they're building the bigger mission task for what's going to happen. The commander has to know what those individual segments that maybe he was not trained in growing up, or she was not, what they bring to the fight. And a lot of the times, the basic understanding of that, I think people think it's just a given with people's MOSs that they know their MOS and they just know what they're supposed to be doing. I really found the more and more you go in the Marine Corps, that separates the difference is you can't go in with a general assumption that you just believe that this unit that you are part of today that has this mission, let's just say a tank battalion or something, you just can't assume that that unit is proficient at what they are in their warfighting skills if you were not the one that were training with them along the way. So as a small unit leader, what I would have done a lot better was the small unit leaders of today are getting caught up in a lot of pre-deployment workup cycles that you as a leader or me as a leader in our younger years, I believe the lieutenant and the NCO was given a lot of white space on the wall to plan their own training to get to a level within those medals that the commander actually did. When we started getting into two wars and the rotating door of going in and out of combat, the bigger Marine Corps kind of took over the big training plan for units and basically started putting them through these rotating doors of you need to hit this wicket, this wicket, this wicket. And the Marine Corps' understanding of that, Mike, was by the end of those training evolutions, these units should have this level of training that I can put them into combat. And there's East Coast units, West Coast units, overseas, and everything else. Everything being the same, like you said before, a rifle battalion on the West Coast should be able to perform the same mission when thrust in as a rifle battalion on the East Coast. I found that a lot of times, Mike, not to be the case. And because you can place a lot of those mission essential tasks that are written in front of somebody and you go through the wickets. The difference between, say, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines at, Camp Horno in Pendleton and 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, is those medals don't have personalities inside of those. Those medals don't have the training level and discipline that's already been in this unit because they've trained to a certain standard for a longer period of time than this unit that was going into that fight. And a lot of times going in as a more mid-management or senior level, the commander didn't have the time in accordance with what was going on to really live in the field like we did before, to get to know who these units were. I'm watching them, I'm moving that. But that is still something that still has to be done. And you know as well as I do, even though you can't be there, your intent is there. And if you have the right amount of people and the right people to have the understanding and where the commander says we're going and what they're going to fill the needs is, I'm now making the training syllabus, aside from whatever's going on, that helps enhance those mission essential tasks. That when those mission sets come down and our commanders come down and they say, these missions just came up. Are we prepared to be able to do this? Can I go to the commanding general and say that we can deliver this? Because the best leaders I ever was a part of, Mike, understood the humanity of the situation. They understood their mission. And in the Marine Corps, it was always, a mission accomplishment, and then it was troop welfare. Units would have a bad time if they transposed those. And then the best ones were the ones that still said, we're still going to accomplish the mission the way it is, but I understand my unit enough on the troop welfare side to know exactly where we stand today. So when I go in there to deliver to the commanding general or to the battalion or the regiment or that, everybody wants to advocate for their boys to get in the fight or their girls to get in the fight. That's the Marine 101 thing. I don't want to just sit on a ship. I don't want to just do this. I want my people to do this. We can take that Sparrowhawk. We can launch. We can do the pilot recovery. We can do this. Give it to our mission. One, as a commander, you don't want your skills to atrophy while you're sitting there on the boys. But secondly is you don't want to be the reckless commander that goes in there without knowledge of their unit either, Mike, and just willingly throws the dart on the board to a commander going, give me that mission, give me that mission, give me that mission. And they have no idea what the capabilities or the things of their entire unit is that comes up to that point. I know there's a lot that is in there that I just kind of put out that was on that. But understanding what it is that your unit is required to do is the first responsibility of any Marine showing up to a unit. Combat leaders get people killed when they believe they've got it all figured out. I've been to 3 combat tours. You haven't been to any combat tours. And then they train or they lackadaisically don't do the same preparations along the way in training their leaders the way they were trained. For the simple fact is they think they have it all figured out. So if you just follow me and do what I say, well, our assumption the last time in the first podcast, Mike, was I can't assume you're going to be there. So I need you to put every effort into training me. I need to understand as a NCO what that commander's intent is, because when that commander can't be there 8 hours a day, I certainly am with them that's down there. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That is the combat cohesion that's built throughout the Marine Corps, is taking commander's intent, knowing what to do with it. And then the guys that sleep, eat, shit, live, look each other day to day in the eye that is on there, they figure everything else on how to make that cohesive and how to make that work. And then your trust tactics between your staff NCOs, your NCOs, your E3s and below, and those commanders that are there 20% of the day or whatever, those trust tactics just start interweaving with each other. And the more that you can do that up front, it's not any epiphany that's out there. The more you can do that, the more of an opportunity to produce successful results when you have to employ that outside the gate. Sometimes Marine units have that luxury, or Air Force units, or anybody else. Sometimes Marine units, the balloon goes up and they just say, you're on the dime. And I had that, Mike. I had the difference in fighting in Nasiriyah in 2003 with 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines, who is a storied unit that is out there in the Marine Corps. And then 1st Battalion, 4th Marines in 2004 in a cemetery fight in the Jacques. The difference between a lot of those two fights was 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines got recalled off of Christmas leave with basically no training cohesively up till that time period. The infantry trained themselves, the armor trained, the artillery trained, but there were no collective field operations before people got called off of leave to get on ships to travel 30 days to then spend about 2 to 3 weeks in the middle of a TAA, a tactical assembly area in Kuwait, trying to figure out tank infantry operations and how to get to know each other. And then all of a sudden it's time to go across the border. And you just kind of hope your Marine training kicks in at that point. That carried the day in Nasiriyah and accomplished the mission in a very chaotic way in 2003. In 2004, that unit got to train to go on a MEU deployment. And instead of just going out to do the MEU, they ended up being given a major city in Iraq in combat space as a MEU. That unit in 2004 was cohesive, collective. Units didn't steal from each other or stockpile ammo over here. They didn't do that. They understood each other. Everybody was friends. There was 11 months of training prior to any of that kind of thing. And it did really produce 2 successful missions. But Mike, they were accomplished with night and day freaking results between those two.
Was your observation, Justin, that those 2 battalions, both dramatically different workups before they departed friendly lines, in both cases, would you say that leadership was still the driving factor toward their success?
I would say leadership usually always is the driving factor, because leadership in the end has to overcompensate for everything that I just said on that. Yeah. They have to say that we've only been together a month, but our mission is still this. This unit is we've been together a year and our mission is this. And the leader has to look at that and go, the same mission sets are the result. The mission accomplished today is, take these 2 bridges or take that cemetery that's here. But the end result is the approach to go about doing that.
Yeah.
And that starts at the top and gets disseminated on down. The trust tactics works both ways. Do I trust my leaders below me to execute in my absence of what it is? And the younger leaders, do I trust the senior leaders to make the decisions in my absence that send me into the assault? Like, those two were drastically different. And if you ever interview anybody that was part of those 2 selective time frames in 2003 and 2004, they will tell you that the fight in Nasiriyah, Iraq, of holding those bridges, almost like a bridge too far that was there for the 1st Marine Division, and again, wanted us to be able to line up combat power to punch through and get up to Baghdad rapidly, is that rapidly delved into a small unit street fight within a matter of minutes that went into there, where senior level command and control was out the window.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah. In 2004, Mike, it still was a street fight, but the senior leaders were in the street fight and they were directing the street fight. And each night we would come out of the street fight. People were looking at the lessons learned for that day before they committed the people back into the street fight the following day. They had the luxury of doing that. So leadership it was different. It really was.
Yeah. And what I just heard you say was, in the best case scenario, the leaders, the senior leaders, were able to accompany the forces in combat and maintain control and leadership. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario was the senior leaders, because the fight broke down. I'm not sure if you were saying it was squad size or platoon size, but small units. So that's the bad news. The commanders don't have control anymore. Now, the good news is apparently the day was carried by NCOs, staff NCOs, and junior officers. Do you agree with that?
I do. The good news is all the way up and down the chain of command, everybody plays their role, their responsibilities. Yeah. And you know as well as I do, hundreds of different, if not thousands of different people participate in these street fights. So even though you're right next to a guy that's on the same block down the road, his vantage point of what he remembers is different in his sector of fire than what yours is that is over there. But the end result is you understood what the mission was. And the mission was, regardless of how this fight was going to go, you knew the objective was the holding of these bridges so that the follow-on forces could do what they needed to do. Yeah. When you understood that, and you understood in this company A or this company B or this company C, I hope that company A is doing okay in their sector. I really do. But I need to hold my sector. And here's my piece of the puzzle. I'm not responsible for this whole city. I'm responsible for this bridge or this sector. And when you get Marine commanders that understand that, and then you get even down to the lowest level, even if you didn't have the time to train effectively, it was out there. When everybody does understand, right down to the lowest rifleman is, my responsibility is this sector and hold until relieved. That's what I've been told. It harkens back to, Saving Private Ryan. And near the end, when Captain Miller is there with Ryan, and they're holding this insignificant little bridge in this freaking town with the airborne troops. The whole idea was we are to hold until relieved. And the end result is the fighting Marine spirit that I grew up on. It was already embedded into me that one, failure is not an option. Secondly, is I'm going to look for advantageous positions that are here. But the one thing I don't have to look for is a route to surrender. I will constantly be looking to reposition forces or do what we have to do to accomplish our mission. And you really do feel in that time period more of a kindred spirit if you did it right, Mike.
Yeah.
Most people don't care who the president of the United States is when they're in a firefight. They care about the person on their left, their right, above, below, whatever they have. But I'm telling you, any Marine that's out there, even when they're scared, if they were trained the right way and they studied their trade and they were told stories by the Indian chief of their tribe, which would be their staff sergeant, their gunny. Let me tell you about Beirut. Let me tell you about this. I really do believe that gives you this intangible extra fighting strength that the enemy doesn't know. And the enemy doesn't know that, quite frankly, dead or alive, you're not getting this intersection, man. We're not going anywhere. And if you want it, it's going to cost you a lot if you can come through here.
Yeah. Yeah, a whole lot you just said right there, and I wanted to pick up on one thing. I want you to talk right now, if you would, Justin, to today's staff NCOs and officers, most of whom are largely in peacetime. We do have some combat deployments going on right now, as you know, but largely it's a peacetime Marine Corps, peacetime Army, and all of that. And the tendency I always found was the tendency in combat was to start trusting corporals and sergeants and lieutenants right away because you had to. But the tendency in peacetime is the command and control sips upward, and the lieutenant colonel, battalion commander, kind of is calling the shots with the three, and the gunny and whatever. And so I'd like to hear your advice, because here's the deal: modern day leaders out there, what if your unit, because someone's unit out there, Justin, is going to be put in that position that you talked about, where the senior leaders could not control the unit. Now it was a small unit fight. And I know you agree with this, that the first time that lieutenants and staff NCOs are required to exercise initiative and bias for action and decisiveness cannot be in combat. Mm-hmm. They must be given the reins in tough, challenging peacetime environments. And that requires the subversion, the egos to be put aside, and the battalion commander to say, you know what, for this one, I'm going to kill one of my company commanders, take him from his company, and make him the battalion commander for this evolution. And so a lieutenant's going to take his place, and I'm going to direct that half of the platoon sergeants in battalion are killed for this one. And I'm going to farm them out and give them different experiences. But the whole point is to put people up in positions 1 or 2 levels higher than their actual billet, and give them exposure to it in peacetime so they can see, holy shit, this is hard. So I need to know this. I know you agree with it, but I would think that your words would have a lot of currency with our today's leaders, because I think the natural tendency is not to do a lot of this. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. And remember, now you're talking, I'm asking you to talk, you're talking now, not to the new kids, but you're talking to NCOs, senior NCOs, and officers.
I think, first of all, there's an age-old thing that's always out there. You can call it wanking or whatever, and a bitching Marine is a happy Marine, or anything else that's there. But the end result is a lot of things that people talk about doesn't always have to take a top-down approach. Some of the best ideas are, if you go into an assumption of you are in a training environment in which mistakes can be made that are here. You have the safety measures in place. We have the training. We're going to let, Sergeant so-and-so is a really good briefer. Corporal so-and-so is not so much a really good briefer. Well, I'm not going to continue to have Sergeant so-and-so keep enhancing his skills. I'm going to put Corporal Smith on the horns of a dilemma in a safe environment that's here, and give Corporal Smith the tools and the rudder steers to be able to hone those skills that you had just talked about. And a lot of times, I believe senior leaders don't always have to have all the answers. They have to pose questions, and they have to be able to listen, and they have to be able to listen to the Lance Corporal and the Corporal who has a great idea right now. And they're standing there and saying, Staff Sergeant, have we thought about this, or can we do this? And the staff sergeant or the gunny that's coming up with that training plan or anything else that is here, one, there's buy-in. Two, it's, the buy-in from the Lance Corporal, the Corporal, is when he has time or she has time, my staff sergeant, my gunnies listen. They may not tell me that's what we're doing, but I do believe they were listening to me, not just shut up, we ain't doing that. This is what's always worked there. I believe that is what the training environment is for. Now, the training environment is not for that on a firing line in a Condition 1 Regan weapon, for somebody to come up with the greatest new idea or to do that. But in these planning phases and in the back 40, what we used to call out behind the barracks in the hills, or over on the basketball court with engineer tape when you're boxing off a house, and you're actually letting the NCOs pie on a corner of a house that they're going in by using engineer tape or to use their 2 hours that day to say, here's the objective. We're going to learn how to stack and pie a house today so that we can go and do what General Krulak kind of laid out. And here's a 3-block war. And the NCO today is going to be like 3-block war. I've never heard of 3-block war. I've never been at EBS. I don't know that. The staff NCO or the young officer is required to give them that says, what I mean by what I just said is this. That means on this block, this could be happening. You will transition to this block. And then by the 3rd block, you're handing out soccer balls and building freaking schools over here when kinetic actions happen just 3 blocks away that's down the thing. And then here's this book. Tonight, here's some required reading for you guys. Don't read the whole thing. Go to chapter whatever. And I want to come back tomorrow. I want you guys to talk about that when you meet me at the basketball court at 8 o'clock tomorrow. And those freaking lanes better damn sure be set up, Sergeant so-and-so, because don't waste my time. And there was a task, there was a condition, and there was a standard that was given right there to that individual. So Mike, here's what I need you to do. I've explained this to you. By tomorrow, when we execute, I demand this, this, and this by 8 o'clock. So you're not wasting my time, so we can teach you something else. You know, generations call it kneecap to kneecap leadership. That isn't just sitting in an office. You know, the office is in the hills. The office is on that basketball court. The office is at the CS chamber. Or, hey, you know, we may be the boat company and we don't know. When's the last time any of you got in the swim tank over there? Okay, let's go to the swim tank for PT tomorrow. And we're going to jump off the 15-foot tower. And we're going to do a competence check and a competence builder. And the funny thing is, 9 times out of 10, that normally came from a corporal or a sergeant going, Gunny LeHew, could we do this? Hey, Staff Sergeant LeHew, could we do this? And a lot of times I found out it's just as easy to say yes. It's one more letter than no in that environment, rather than just say no, no, no up front, we're going to do this. When you have that white space we talk, you already factor in this. My medals take up 80% of the white space. But the 20% of this white space, I want you guys to come back to me and let's build this 20% here of what those intangibles are going to be to reinforce, to allow us to be the best squad, best platoon, best whatever. And then rewards and punishments that are in there. And those can't kind of cross that with each other. Squad 1 performs a certain thing. Hey, you guys are off for the night, 2 extra hours or whatever. Go ahead. Squad 2, you were behind by 1 minute and 22 seconds or whatever that's on there. We're gonna do 90 flutter kicks. Get over here off to the side. And tomorrow, I'm going to talk to you for about 5 minutes. And when I let Squad 1 go, I'm going to reinforce the Squad 2 that they can do better. Here's what you might want to do. I watched Squad 1 to do that. And why don't you go out there with whatever you can do tomorrow and see if you can't kick Squad 1's ass. And you build that within the unit. And then that type of thing and camaraderie that builds is, you're not going to beat me today. Oh, hell no, you're certainly not going to beat me over there. And those are the intangibles as a small unit leader that I believe you have to give those opportunities to people. And Mike, you only need to do it one time. That you need to show people that you are just open to these new training things. And you're just not the guy that walks out of the meeting at 8 o'clock every morning, stands in the formation, delivers whatever it is, if there is even a formation out there of face-to-face. And you're saying, okay, so what do we got today, gents? How are we going to get better today? And that was always the going to work fun for everybody when you did that.
Yeah. Again, a lot of solid gold right there, Justin. I want to dovetail on that with experience that I had as a lieutenant. My company commander, I was in 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, as a 2nd lieutenant, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Ray Smith. And it was the early stages of maneuver warfare and trusting NCOs and junior officers. So Fox Company 2-8 would go to the field for 3 days in the middle of the week. And once we humped out there, the first day and a half was Lieutenant Etour's time. My captain assigned me to a couple of grid squares and said, this is your area. Go out there and train. tell me what you're doing. I'll set up a headquarters. And he did this to all the platoons. And so now it was up to me to create a training schedule. And as important, it was up to me to decide how much time was I going to give to the squad leaders so I could give them a little slice of those grid squares and say, here's your time. Of the 7 hours I'm giving you, I would like you to cover A, B, and C, crossing a danger area, setting up machine guns, whatever. I would love you to cover these 3 things I'm asking you to, and then anything else you think your squad needs to work on. And I need you all to meet me at this rally point at 1500, and we're going to start working as a platoon. And tomorrow at 1700, we're linking up with the captain. We're going to start working as a company. This isn't rocket science. I would encourage junior leaders in the Marine Corps, NCOs, staff NCOs, and officers, and the other services to, if they're not getting this kind of latitude and leeway and responsibility, to respectfully and tactfully ask for it. And then if you're given it, show up. You can't blow it. You got to show up. And then if you're a senior staff NCO officer, I would encourage you to really ensure that this technique is used in your unit. In a different world, Justin, if I was a battalion commander, regimental commander, division commander, I would make known very early on in my tenure that the NCO, the squad leader, is the most important leader in the unit. And as goes the squad leader, the dozens of squad leaders we have in this battalion, so goes the battalion when things break down and it is a squad level, a platoon level fight. Therefore, I am judging you, captains, colonels, staff sergeants, on the merits of your squad leaders. And I want to know how many, when I go out and observe you in the field, I really want to see NCOs and staff NCOs and lieutenants leading the way. And I like to see captains teaching and gunnies and staff sergeants kind of standing off to the side, teaching and evaluating and critiquing. But fellows, I know you can do it, but I need to know that the squad leaders, the younger guys, can do it. The only way that can happen is if you step aside and let them run, give them room to run. And to your point, Justin, I'm not saying do this for the first time at the 400 ranges, and a live fire and all. No. But not every training op has to be under the purview of young Clausewitz, I call them, that young lieutenant or captain or battalion commander or whatever. So any last rounds on that one?
Make no mistake, a few years back, and I will tell you, I kind of went round and round with a few people when I had training and education command, is we were on this talking point of years ago, we'd had these creeds that were out. It was NCO creed, staff NCO creed, and you had these creeds that came out that were there, and they were never formal. They were unpublished. You saw them in your leadership academies, and you did this. Well, the Marine Corps went through this thing in about 2015 timeframe that said, that old stuff needs to be revised, needs to be brought up and modernized. It really isn't saying what today's squad leader needs to hear in 2015 compared to 1971 or compared to 1978. And I will tell you, like, more than anything in the Marine Corps that I had saw that is change, and change is much needed, and this needs to come, whether it's equipment, whether it's tactics that go along with that and that. I vehemently was like, pole in the ground. This is unwavering. This is unquestionable. We are making a mistake by one of the most pristine documents that the Marine Corps has produced in the past 40 years, and it's the NCO Creed. And I said it was the NCO Creed that was given to me, and it was about 88 words. It was small enough you could memorize. It wasn't 270 or whatever we made it today that incorporated these different elements of warfare and all that. And the NCO Creed of that time, Mike, was interchangeable with any leadership rank in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. It started with, I am an NCO dedicated to training new Marines and influencing the old. I am forever conscious of each Marine under my charge. And by my example, I will inspire them to the highest standards possible. I will strive to be patient, understanding, just, and firm. I will commend the deserving. I will encourage the wayward. I will never forget that I am responsible to my commanding officer for the morale, discipline, and efficiency of this unit, and their performance will reflect an image of me. So all these people that were always out there that said, you know, we're a bad unit because Captain so-and-so is a bad leader, or we're a bad, morale sucks around here because the colonel is freaking this. No, corporal and sergeant, it says right in your creed, you are responsible for the morale, discipline, and efficiency of this unit. If this is a shitty unit, go look in the mirror. And it starts with you. It doesn't start with Gunny so-and-so. It doesn't start there. What are the changes that you're making today? And even though, Mike, that said, I am an NCO, you can change that with, I am a captain of Marines, dedicated to training new Marines and influencing the old. I am forever conscious of each Marine under my charge, and by my example, as a captain, will inspire them to the highest standards possible. I will strive to be patient, understanding, just, and firm. I will commend the deserving and encourage the wayward. And I, too, am responsible to my commanding officer for the morale, discipline, and efficiency of my Marines, and their performance will reflect an image of me. That goes captain, that goes Iron Major, that goes Lieutenant Colonel, that goes all the way up to Brigadier General, 3-star that answers to a 4-star. And it is just this beautiful, basic document that lays out the foundations for success. And it gives you all the tangible things right there in less than 90 words that says, if I follow this path that's laid right here, and I do these things that are here, or if I'm a leader, I ask my Marines or my men and my women to do these things, then everybody has buy-in. There's no finger pointing, there's no nothing. All 162 people in this rifle company looks themselves in the mirror every day first and says, am I living up to the standard of what's emblazoned on my left breast pocket? Secondly is, am I proud of the work that I put forward today every night when they go to bed and they do that and they get ready for the next day? And then thirdly is, did I enforce that standard and uphold that to the people who were a little bit weaker than me with their standards? Did I not just try to go out that day and say I'm the greatest and everybody else is just weaker? Did I go out that day and do what I could do to help build that person to the left and right so that we brought them all up together so that the line is strong all the way across, not just strength on the right side and a little bit over here on the left side? And the NCO Creed laid that foundation that was out there for generations of Marines to apply that in both peacetime and wartime. And other than the foundational document of the 3 stanzas of the Marines hymn, which anybody in Congress or that Mike has to look and just say, what is it that the Marines really do for this country? If you're uneducated, look at the 3 stanzas of the Marines hymn. It gives a blueprint for exactly what the Marine Corps has done for the nation, what it is doing for the nation, and what it will continue to do for the nation in those 3 simple stanzas that are in the Marines hymn. When we start jockeying with some of these foundational documents that build this foundation, I took it at the time, it's akin to, jockeying with the Declaration or the Constitution. There are just certain things that, regardless of if this is the year 2120 or something, as we exist as a naval landing force or a fighting force, or we're building the basic tenets of leadership, those archaic foundational documents are no different on what they required of a leader years ago. And they're also going to be the same thing that we require of a leader 100 years from now.
Very well said. I do agree with that. In fact, I agree with it so much. Justin, that I wrote a book entitled Trust-Based Leadership. And it really is Marine Corps leadership as applied to the business world. And inside that, I included verbatim excerpts from General John A. Lejeune's 1921 missive, in which he described special trust and confidence. He described the teacher-scholar relationship. And it's about 6 or 7 long paragraphs. I teach business leaders with this, but I challenge any military leader of any service and of any rank or grade to look at those paragraphs. And I dare you to tell me that all of it doesn't apply today 100% to the leadership relationship between the leaders and the led. So to your point, and that document's older than the NCO Creed that you're talking about, to your point, the fundamental science of leadership and human nature has not changed for thousands of years, and it's not going to change despite technology and drones and satellites and things like that. When you got 2 human beings involved, leadership and human nature and communication skills and all of that is going to reign supreme. And to your point, just because you've been saddled with a bad commander or a bad senior NCO doesn't mean your squad has to be bad or your platoon is doomed to be bad. Will things be a little bit more difficult? Sure. But flip that around, Justin. We've all seen units that were commanded by incredible leaders, the best you could hope for. And so it's a shit hot battalion commander. And he's got a great battalion sergeant major. And for whatever reason, one of their line companies is just, it sucks. The morale is bad. And so there's no excuse to it. The leaders at the top are great. The training environment is great. The unit culture is great. What is it then? Why are all the other units well, except one where all the problems are coming from? All of the peacetime problems are coming from. And by the way, I venture to say all of the combat problems will come from as well. So I hear you. I think what you're saying, among many things, is no excuses. You know, at the end of the day, your fire team, squad, platoon, section, company, whatever, at the end of the day, you still, if you're the leader, you still have great latitude and a high degree of influence on the morale and discipline and readiness of that unit. And don't tolerate excuses, because the enemy will tolerate none. He will exploit them, and he'll stick a knife right in your lungs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't matter if you're 5'6", 6'2", black, white, Puerto Rican, Jew, anything. The enemy don't care of any of that stuff. So as a leader, you know, you mentioned, you know, senior leaders looking down at what makes, you know, Company A different from Company B, or that as a senior leader, you really have the tactical overview to be able, if you know your individual units, you have the tactical overview to be able to balance those units and switch. You know, this might be square peg round hole type thing. This isn't something, this just fits better if it moves over to here, and you kind of look at the bigger picture rather than, well, that's a throwaway COA because they're just bad leaders or they're bad this. And then you go through that age-old adage, it's like a commander with NJP authority. The end result is, if everybody in the battalion knows that when they come in for NJP, they're going to get 45, and they're going to walk out with their stripe, regardless of what it is that anybody did around here, you're going to have a bad unit, because the commander is not weighing the merits of the case for what it is that is on there. And you saw it at Camp Lejeune, anywhere else throughout your career. I can remember a run at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where it just seemed like one unit was just getting DUIs every weekend. And, you know, you're getting it from the general's building at the battalion level on your battalion is the one that's jacking up the stats for everybody else. It's on the board, right? And then you look at the battalion and you're like, man, it's that company. Then you look at the company and you find out, man, it's that same platoon that's down there that's the one doing it. But the end result always was, it didn't matter, Mike, if it was just that platoon. Everybody got punished. Everybody got their weekend taken away. It was like prison rules. So if anybody screws up this week, you're all on lockdown. Well, hey, man, I don't have any effect over that platoon that's over there. And you don't want me to be walking upstairs and doing prison rules with people to start putting soaps in, you know, in sock things, you start doing that. That's exactly right. The best units I ever had never imposed those kind of, they attacked the problem and identified what the root of the problem was, isolated that root of the problem, and it did not combat degrade everything else that went on around.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, we're getting ready to wrap up here, but I always ask everybody I interview, Justin, a fantasy question. If you're given the opportunity to spend one day with one combat leader from the past, who would you choose to spend this day with and why?
That is probably one of the best questions that came out. Like, it's all gold that's on there. I would say among those that are out there, a man by the name of Colonel Joshua Chamberlain is the person that I would spend 24 hours with. And the why to that is Joshua Chamberlain of Little Round Top, Maine, in July of 1863, of course, led one of the greatest bayonet charges in American history that swept down on the Confederacy, closed the door, and basically made sure that the city of Gettysburg, the Confederacy, didn't sweep over the hill and go on into the city to carry the day. And the majority of people know that Joshua Chamberlain was awarded the Medal of Honor for that actions. That has nothing to do with why I would want to spend the day with Joshua Chamberlain. Joshua Chamberlain is fascinating to me on the grounds of he is a citizen soldier that was not a professional soldier, so to say, really had love of country, really had the academic environment as well out of Bowdoin College in Maine to really do that. This is at a time when you can raise your own regiments, and he was not initially the commander of the world famous. He came in as being another leader that was in there. And Joshua Chamberlain then took that unit, and they started at the base of Virginia and started working their way all the way north. So by the time that they got there in 1863, he had already honed his leadership skills in Fredericksburg on Marie's Heights. He had already had at least 2 horses by that time frame shot out from underneath him. He was already wounded by that time frame with injuries that would have removed any soldier in the Civil War from the field of battle and never had them go back into combat. He stayed in that unit. His brother was in that unit. They knew everybody who was in that unit. And then all the way from Petersburg to Fredericksburg, all the way through the Shenandoah, all the way up into where he ended up in that fighting position on that day. The most fabulous thing in him was he's pondering this situation that is getting laid upon him. And what that is he started in a regiment that had 900 men when it started.
Yeah.
And by the time he gets to Gettysburg, he has less than 300. And they're told they need to hold next to the New Yorks and this big portion of this line. And as a commander, the day prior, basically somebody rides into the position and says, we've got these 100 kind of deserters from this other main regiment, and we're going to give them to you because they don't want to fight anymore. And he's given this order, if none of them wants to fight, you can go ahead and execute them. You know, you have basically more to deal with right now on your mind. You're going to go into the Round Top. You're going to hold this position. You're going to do this. Brother comes in and he tells his brother, he says, these are men whose contracts had ran out and they didn't want to re-enlist. And now they don't want to fight anymore. They want to go home, and they're from Maine. And he's sitting there and he tells his brother, get them out underneath this tree. I'd like to talk to all of them. And on the eve of going into battle, when he should have been doing a lot more stuff and had all this stuff happening, he takes these men out there, pulls up basically a camp stool and sits around, and he welcomes them, says, I understand your plight. And before he says any words whatsoever, he takes his ace of spades off the table and he looks at them and says, I've been given orders that if you don't comply, I'm authorized to shoot you. That's here. And he said, you're Maine men. I'm not going to do that. So right there, I'm not getting put to death. I'm Private Schmuckatelli.
Yeah.
You know what? Thank you very much. I still don't want to fight, but I know I'm not going to die today. And then he sits there and he explains to them the situation. He explains to them the history where they came from. He talked to them about their hometown and their farms where they came from, meaning he knew their regiment. He knew their hometowns. He knew where they all came from. And basically he tied it together and said, we started with this many. I now have this many. And if you don't want to fight, you don't have to fight, but you're going to do something. You can carry the wounded. You can do anything else that is here. He said, but by God, I need you. He said, I could really use your help. And he gave them the situation and he gave them the mission. And he basically said, you can enter this war one way or another, or you can leave it this way without your honor or anything else. And I'm affording you the opportunity. And then he allowed them to sit out there, the story goes, and talk amongst themselves. And he said, I'd just like to know, the regiment's marching out tomorrow. If you want to join it, you're more than welcome to do it. And he went back to planning what he had to do with the other 300 he had, to hold his mission to do that. The following day, as history states, when the regiment mounted up the rig and move out, his aide, who's his brother, kind of rolls in and says, Colonel Darling, here's the thing. You're never going to believe this. And he said, basically, Tom, how many of them? He said, all of them. He said, majority of all of them is going to fight. There's a couple who are back with the litter. They're not there, but they're all here to do that. And what that teaches, and why that's why I would love to sit there that day, is you have all this weight on your shoulders. You're burdened with this extra thing that just happened. And you're also given an easy out to not deal with that. And you tactically look at the situation you're in, and you come to the assumption is, I need you. And then you make them believers. And then you inspire them to say, I will be fighting with you, and you will be fighting with your brothers. And then they go up there on that line. You had mentioned in the first pass about Jimmy Howard and Howard's Hill.
Yeah.
By the time the 7th Marines came in to take Howard off that hill, they had 7 rounds of ammunition left amongst all of them. It was held in a little cloth that were on that. And Jimmy would not allow himself, even though he couldn't move his legs, he wouldn't allow himself to be removed from the battle until the infantry Marines promised to find the guys he couldn't account for that were drug off by the Vietnamese off the top of that hill. And they found them. And they brought the family back. And then Jimmy got on the helicopter. The rest is history. But Jimmy institutes that same thing. Throw the rock. The enemy will think it's a grenade. We can conserve ammunition. Joshua Chamberlain is getting this on top of the hill the next day. We're out of ammunition. The reports are this. And he looks and says, it is not an option to not hold this hill. Fix bayonets. And he yells it in one thing. Everybody, his officers, it tells his officers in crisp, clear, concise brevity on top of that hill, we're about to have them come at us again. I need you to do this. I need you to left wheel. When you hear me to do this, we will have the advantage striking down the hill. While they are coming up the hill, they have no ammunition. He yells, fix bayonets. The rest of them is just shitting themselves. I don't have any ammunition. There's even records that are in there, and this isn't just from the movies. There's even records in there of his, after he's held the position, the young privates who are moving captured Confederates are telling him, Colonel, I have no ammunition in my gun that's here. And he basically says, don't let the Rebs know that. Just keep moving the mission. Do what we have to do. For him to have that much situational awareness.
Yeah.
What he did. In the presence of mind of overwhelming odds, in the fear of we're going to get completely wiped out that is inside of here, and then on the backside of that, not only hold that to the man that was up there, but then be given the most honored responsibility by General Grant at Appomattox to be chosen as the officer to be in charge of receiving the Confederates coming in that actually are going to lay down their weapons when Lee is coming to the meeting. And the hatred, the vitriol between these two organizations, Joshua Chamberlain is at the head of the column at Appomattox. The generals are marching in, the Confederacy is coming in, and he calls the Union Army to attention and salutes the Confederacy as they were brothers. And he had said, we now have to build this nation with these men. There's no reason to keep pouring salt in the wounds. The officers were allowed, sure, you can keep your sword that was here. And that, to me, here's a guy that was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was also, again, after that fight, shot through the shoulder and almost had to have his arm amputated and stayed in the fight. And he was honestly regarded as one, on both sides, one of the most honorable officers to ever wear the uniform in American history, to do that.
Amazing leader and an appropriate choice, I might add. Should divine providence bring him back? If he does contact you, let me know. I'd like to join that session. But I want to ask you
anything, and he does contact that when he comes back. We're making a Marine this time.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you, Justin. We are going to wrap up, but before we do so, I know that you're involved in several enterprises right now, projects and all of that. And I'd like to hear about what you're doing, and if appropriate, how other people who are interested could perhaps help you.
Absolutely, Mike. What I've been doing since I transitioned out of the Marine Corps was I'm the chief operating officer of a private MIA search and recovery organization called History Flight. And anybody's more than welcome to go over to www.historyflight.com. It's really easy. It's on there, and see what we have going on over here, because we have managed in the past 10 years to be the world's most successful private MIA search and recovery organization. And what I have over here, it's something that's really beautiful. And what that is we have created an institutional mandate that lives up to the promise that we don't leave our dead and wounded on the battlefield, that Americans will do whatever it takes to try to bring their brothers and sisters home. And I say brothers and sisters because in the future there will be sisters. And unfortunately, in this casualty right now, a majority of all of our MIAs and all throughout our wars just happen to have been male. And so that's everybody that you see coming home in the news today. And at portions, we are a 501c3 organization who receives charitable contributions to do this mission. And then I have a couple of other things that are out there as well through this great organization that was created by Mark Noah years ago that allows us to take the professional aspect of what I have here, and that's some of the best, most well-renowned forensic scientists, anthropologists, archaeologists, military EOD specialists, military former team leaders that were in SF, infantry, you name it, and kind of go around and build a very cohesive team here that's also international. And what that does is we identify, get calls, research cases. The government will contact us as well because they have the primary mission. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, a lot of times our organizations get confused. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency is the title to an agency for the United States of America that's responsible for the casualty mission around the world of our MIAs and bringing people home. There's still over 78,000 missing just from World War II alone. And then you layer that through Korea, you layer that through about 1,900 in Vietnam, 200 in between the Cold War freaking era that is still out there. Like, that mission could be done for 100 to 200 years, and we're never going to be able to bring back a majority of them. And a lot of them, as you're well aware, that are naval cases, that we have hundreds lost on board ships that are out there. And those are graveyards in and of themselves. But of all those casualties, America believes that about 30,000 of them are still recoverable, somewhere from mass graves or one-man fighting positions in different places around the world. And what we do is we have our researchers start doing the research early. And what I like to say is we now have a 93% success rate in the last 2 years of finding everything we look for. And I tell people, how would you love to have a 93% investment on your IRA account or on any money that you're actually putting in there compared to this? Last year, 79 returned Marines from the island of Tarawa that was out there. This year, trending up to 14 already. And also this past spring and summer and fall, we located 7 U.S. Army aircrew from P-47s, navigators on B-17s, waist gunners on B-24s, through the help of local nations, local volunteers in Germany and Belgium, in France, and then all throughout the Pacific. And we go out on those sites. We place our archaeological teams on those sites. And we don't leave the sites till we find it. And a lot of other things over the years is there's a lot of timelines associated. I had said before, the DPA has this large scope. And this scope is, a few years ago, they decided we're going to privatize some of this to have people come out and try to help us do this. And so we make proposals and we do the research. And what we try to do is be good stewards of the government's dime and time. And what that is we will not go out and put a shovel in the ground on some half-assed search that is going out there. Somebody asked me about a month ago, how do you have a 93% success rate? And a lot of people think, well, they're not going to tell you because that's a trade secret on how they do that. It's not really a trade secret. A lot of it is in the research and the prep work. Before you ever put a shovel in the ground, and you take a military grid reference system map based on that and says where somebody else would dig in a map that is 1,000 by 1,000 on a grid square and says they went into that target area to try to search for this bomb or this plane or something like that, we tend to take the research and start necking that block down. And I related it to people. It's like a fire support coordinator or a fire direction center would never throw rounds into 1,000 by 1,000 box that somebody's calling danger close in on type of doing their perimeter. You know, that's going to be a 6-digit grid at 100. It's going to be an 8-digit grid get you 10. A 10-digit grid gets you within 1 meter. We try to always do a 10-digit grid, and we put a shovel on a meter within the research that we do. That has produced a 93% success rate of bringing these men home. We have a young man. Due to COVID right now, a lot of the families of the identifications, this just recently happened, they have been putting off their funerals because no one can attend these funerals, or they're really restricted with what they can do.
Yeah.
And after 75 to 76 years of these individuals being lost and what they've given, you know, they deserve everything and more of what that family has suffered through over the past 76 years, and to have their name and their place in history recognized. And we do whatever we can do to bring them back. We don't identify them. Mike, I may know who they are. I may know within the National Archives, that's who this is. I may know this or this. That's not my job. My job is to research, locate, and go find them and bring them back and turn them over to the Defense POWMIA Accounting Agency, who has the mandate of identification. They are the only sole agency that can tell a family in the United States or in the world, we just found your grandfather. We just did this. And that is just such a great feeling now to have been the Marine before that has had to go knock on someone's door saying your son's not coming home.
Yeah.
And have that family just completely collapse in your arms and crush years. Now, after the Defense POWMIA Accounting Agency says, we just identified PFC Smith that's here, and like the present day casualties, like the casualty assistance call officers in the military is still responsible, even though these casualties are 70-some years ago. The U.S. Marine Corps sends somebody to that and sit down with them and explain the case to them. And then they will do the case, just like that call officer, they will say, we have located your grandfather. And then we'll get a call, and it'll be like, we've just made notification to the family. Our researchers, one of our great ones, normally knows instantly. She'll give me a call, and the greatest injunction and best feeling in the world is being on this side of the fence now that can now go to somebody's house. And those are not tears of sadness. Those are tears of joy that when you say, after all these years, we didn't forget the promise. We just found your brother. And your sister's still alive, and she's 94 years old. And all she's ever told the family is, I hope they find my brother before I pass over. And we get these stories that has a niece or a granddaughter that calls us and says, time ran out. Unfortunately, my aunt just died or whatever. And we kind of know historically, we may know within the next 4 months because we've excavated, we've done this, but we can't say that. But it's always so great to hear the granddaughter say, even right before that passed, she just kept saying, whatever you do, young lady, you keep the family's promise and you go find my brother. And then at these funerals and everything else, Mike, you can then take these individuals who went out into these hometown cemeteries and put them with the rightful place and remove the family historical marker that says that this is private so-and-so. And we were so honored that he gave his life for his country, lost on November 23rd, 1943, but there's no one there. It's just a memorial marker. It's one of the greatest honors in life is to watch somebody remove that memorial marker and then the VA come out and put a white headstone that says that boy is now back home.
What a noble cause. I'm kind of speechless. You said it all. I can't imagine the satisfaction you get from doing that. I do see on Facebook and other social media when you're involved in bringing them home, and it's just you see pictures of them as a young fella and realize that they're finally home after so long from World War II and all of that. So I would like you to tell us the website once again so people can find you, Justin.
Sure, Mike. It's www.historyflight, FLIGHT, altogether.com. And then just a simple Google that's History Flight that's on there. It'll direct people right to that, or it'll direct people right to our Facebook page that's on there. And between both of those, there is ways that are on there if they would like to get involved, not only just through financial donations, which are always greatly appreciative to help keep the mission, but they'll see volunteer forms that are on there that they can download, send in, and it doesn't matter if they're 82 or they're 22. A lot of times we'll cull through those and you'll just pull out a little gold nugget of something inside there that says, wow, we've really been looking for somebody like you or that skill set to help out in this aspect to do that. And we're always looking for people like that, Mike.
Nice. Well, Justin, I can't thank you enough for all of the time that you share with us. I think these podcast episodes are going to be quite popular. You shared a lot of your personal experiences and certainly a lot of wisdom and valuable insights. And any aspiring combat leader or even experienced combat leader is going to be better off for listening to you. And again, thank you for your time with the podcast, and please come back in the future.
Thanks, Mike. I really do. You're doing a really great thing with this, and it would be my honor to be able to come back and contribute any way that we can deem possible.
Thank you. We are rounds complete for this podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.